Hello, whiskey folk. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to, I hope, what is going to be a stress-free, relatively solid tech live stream tonight. Every single time I've tried to go live in recent weeks, there's been something that has scuppered me, whether it's the data connection, whether it's the machine itself, or something to do with the new software. So please, barflies, tell me that I'm coming through loud and clear and you can see me. Just tell me how we're doing tonight. Welcome, everybody. Fantastic to see so many of you waiting for the pub doors to open. Come in, have a seat next to your fellow barflies and tell us what you're sipping tonight. Tell me as well if you're sipping something kind of along the lines of tonight's theme, and that is retro whiskies. And I'll explain a wee bit about what I mean when I talk about retro whiskies. It's not perhaps the best way to describe them, but I was kind of drawn away from old and rare, and I didn't want to refer to them as vintage, and I'll explain about that a wee bit more about that a bit later. How are we all? It's fantastic to see you all, and thanks so much for joining me on an out of sync week. I had to pull it forward by a week because obviously next week, I'm really excited, I'm heading out to Texas to join the Whisky Tribe for their annual, they're calling it the Bastards Ball this year. So I get to hang out with loads of whiskey folk, magnificent bastards, and other YouTube channels out there. So I appreciate that this is a wee bit out of sync, and I'm doing the vPub a week early. But you seem to be okay with that. 120 of you in already, and it's wonderful to see you all. Let's give you guys a quick shout out before we go on to talking about what the theme and content is going to focus on tonight. The first name I look at is Jay Chung. I managed to meet up with Jay Chung. We managed to find a pocket of time, and I had a hookup with Jay Chung in Glasgow last night, and it was fantastic to hang out with Jay and finally present him with the bottle of Aaron 14 that he won months and months ago. But I managed to hand that over to Jay last night. And over my shoulder, you'll see, perhaps if I pull up the camera, hopefully you can see it, yes, here. Sitting on my shoulder was a wonderful gift from Jay. Another fantastic gift from you guys, from the community, a bottle of Long Row Malbec. Anybody that's heard me evangelize about that Malbec Long Row and what it did to me will know how much I love it. And I was very emotional. I held back. I didn't get emotional, but I got caught when he handed that to me. It was a really fantastic gesture. Great to see you, NJ, and thank you so much. Whiskey in the Six Rob has just sent across a dram saying, hello, Roy, and all fellow whiskey folk. Hope all is well. I wish I could be there next week. Work, sad face. Rob, I know. A lot of the channels that were invited, just because of timing, just because of work commitments and family commitments, can't make it, and it's such a shame. So I know that I'm not going to be able to see you, Rob, next week, but we will get together at some point in the future. And all the other channels that can't make it this time, we'll find another way to get up to some shenanigans at another time. Slancher, my friend Rob, thank you so much for your constant class and generosity. So yeah, Jay Chung, we had fantastic fun and drank some nice drams last night. James McGorrin's in from Sweden. Good to see you, James. Tabitha Adams, good to see you again, Tabitha. Marcus Kreitner and hopefully Christina is joining us tonight as well. Rolf Ebhead is in. Great to see you, Rolf. Looking forward to hooking up with you in Frankfurt later in the year as well. Donner Pask Whiskey is in, as is Mark J.G. Mark Goins. Fantastic to see you, Mark, and Donner Pass. Mose is in. Glenn Boyd. Donald Rance. Fantastic, Donald. I know we've been chatting offline. Menno Whiskey Geek is in, or Whiskey Wise Guy, sorry. Good to see you, Menno. And I've just picked up some comments from you that I'll use some replies on as well. Stuart Whiskey Wims is here. George O'Brien, great to see you, George. Richard Hall, James Hope, wonderful, James. I know we got to hang out in Edinburgh recently as well. Always a pleasure. Luna Aaron from Germany. Welsh Toro, good to see you, Welsh. Kresimir Jelcic, you'd need to help me with the pronunciation there, my friend. And Scott is in. Fantastic to see you back again after your travels, Scott. I know you've been super busy. Great to have Kilted Moose back with us again. Greg from France, Greg's Whiskey Guide, always here. You're a stalwart, Greg, and it's wonderful to have you. Scotty S, good to see you here again. Jimmy Legg, Blair, you star, fantastic to have you in watching live tonight, Jimmy. Wonderful to have you. Nigel Slynn, Sunday Evening Scotch. McCallan Fine and Rare, the Doc, fantastic. So many of you. My friend Dwayne Large from Indiana. Wonderful, wonderful folk. I'll jump in and out of the chat throughout the night and try and catch as many of you as I can. The comments that I do pick up tend to be the ones that have Aqua Vitae written. It's highlighted in orange for me, and I can see those comments. Skogsmard, hi, good to see you, saying, how is the bottle with a piece of wood in it coming along? Has the colour changed at all? Skogsmard, let's talk about that right now. I'll show you. Honestly, I think it's slowed down a little bit. You can see it's got a kind of pale yellow, very kind of white wine colour to it. And I'm due to take a sample from it, not this week, probably next week. Every 2 weeks I'm taking it. But you'll see that there's a 2-week difference in these two. And I'd say it's virtually identical in this small quantity, of course. So it's slowed down a bit. And I wonder how much of that is to do with light. Probably not much. But what happens is if you leave it sitting still, around the applewood chunk that sits in there, you do get a bit of dark coloration, and the liquid around the wood itself is a little bit darker. And then as soon as you pick it up and flip it, obviously that colour dissipates throughout the rest of the spirit. But it is changing, it is maturing, it is getting darker. And have I told you this is actually quite tasty? It's only 40%, as I keep mentioning, but it's lovely and sweet. I'm going to pour some of this for my wife, who has a bit of sweet tooth when it comes to spirits. I think she would like this. Gagetown Canadian Rye. Your whiskey is here. That's Matt. I'm due to hook up with Matt. Fingers crossed tomorrow, someday very, very soon. We're going to do a bit of a podcast together. We're going to do it live, and I think he releases it as a pre-recorded thing. So we're going to do an interview and discuss closed and the reopening of closed distilleries. I've got a book here actually that I've been flicking through and doing a bit of swatting up for that subject. This is a book called Scotch Mist. This is the 4th edition, which was 2017. I think it was 2017 anyway. I don't know if there's a newer edition out. Yeah, reprinted 2017. This is by Brian Townsend, and they could really do with a newer version of this. There's some content that they could expand on a wee bit, I think, and especially with the news that Brora, Port Ellen, Rosebank, and those distilleries are being reopened again. But it's a fantastic glimpse into the past of Scotch whisky history. Matthias, thank you very much for your virtual dram, and I'm looking forward to hooking up with you live. Matthias is putting his podcasts out on his channel, Ear Whiskey, on YouTube. So they are broadcast as a video, but they're designed in order for you to be able to listen to them in a podcast style. Sláinte, my friend. He's saying a dram for your travels. Have a safe trip, buddy. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. The doc is in, and the doc is saying, next vPub will be 10K plus subscribers. So exciting. Should be 100K. Can you imagine what the live streams would be like if it was 100K now? Yeah, the subscribers are fantastic. But the thing that I really hold dear to my heart is you guys, the active people who watch, like, and comment, and the guys who join in the lounge here, the barflies. It's getting that engagement. It's almost like the subs is a really nice affirmation. It's nice to see the channel growing. But it's incidental compared to what you guys bring week on week. That being said, I do have a small celebration planned for the next live after I hit that 10K mark. I think I'm about 30 or 40 subs away. And when I hit that, there will be a small giveaway to mark it. And it's a nice giveaway. It's got a bit of a kind of a, let's not say sentimental, but a bit of an appropriate touch to it, I think. So you can look forward to that. Hopefully it could be the stream that we go live with in October, later in October. Which I'm also planning a guest for. And the subject, I can tell you, is, I've only released this to my patrons so far, but it was a celebration of the sherry cask. And that's a subject that I've invited in some outside expertise to talk about. So I hope you can join me for that. Scorgo Smart is saying, thanks for the bottle update. You're very welcome, my friend. Bram Butterham, that looks like a new name. You're very welcome in. He's saying hello there, Aqua Vitae and chat. You're very welcome here. Say hello to Bram, everyone, and welcome him or her in. Good to have you. Scotty saying Aquaviti had whiskey experience day to day at Ballandalach Distillery. Fantastic. The new make was outstanding, only 4 years before they start to bottle. You're one of very few that's been able to try that new make because they will not allow it off the premises. And I enjoyed my sample of that very much as well. Eric Waite is in. Fantastic to see you, Eric. Looking forward to seeing you next week, my friend. Hello from California. I just got an Ardbeg Supernova 2019 opening it tonight. I hope you enjoy it, Eric. Now, that's, is that their 5th edition Supernova? 6th. It's almost like it's a bit like Last Blood, Sylvester Stallone, right? They keep telling us that, you know, this is the last in the series, this is the last Supernova there's going to be, and then out pops another one a couple of years down the road. So yeah, Supernova, of course, is Ardbeg's peatiest expression. They've just released on the 2nd of October. They released their new one. £140 for the pleasure, non-age statement. But to be honest with you, it's always a fantastic experience in terms of whiskey. But again, it's priced at that level that it's really speaking towards the hardcore Ardbeg fans, the hardcore peatheads perhaps. And I think it's one that I'm going to sit out on. I just spent a lot of money, as you guys know, on last week's subject, and when I shared the Ardbeg tray van. And you'll see that this is already half full. That's not my drinking. These have all been decanted. I shared a post on Instagram earlier today to show everyone I'd decanted that whiskey into little bottles, and it's been shipped this afternoon in all sorts of directions everywhere to share with all of you guys to see what you think of the Ardbeg 19. I can say that it's a wee bit better now than it was when I first opened it. Isn't that normally the case? Wonderful to see you all. Wonderful to have so many of you in, even on an off week. Listen, the subject tonight as well, I think, is a wee bit esoteric. It's not like a big brand. It's not like a big release. It's not like a comparison that's really going to get everybody discussing. It's a bit of a softer subject, I think, but it's one that's really close to my heart. When I started to get into whiskey and to understand what whiskey was, more than just the brand, more than just what was in a bottle that I could buy at that time, once I started to study the history, I wanted to track down some older expressions. And a lot of that was fueled by reading reviews from people who talked about whiskey not being what it used to be, or the new expression not being as good as the old expressions were. And sometimes they were only talking about 2 or 3 years previous, but oftentimes they were talking about whiskies that were available to them in the 90s and in the 80s and even earlier. So I decided that perhaps that was whiskey that I couldn't afford very easily. But then as you start to cruise the auctions, you understand that if you avoid the big brands, if you avoid the Macallans and the Bulvenis, and if you avoid the old Islas and things, there are lots and lots of kind of under the radar, or let's say more ubiquitous whiskies where there were lots of stocks of it, blends mostly. You can find, I appreciate this is on auction, but either on auction or in private collections or in stores that specialize in that kind of thing, or Dusties, or you can find really nice bargains that give you a glimpse of older styles of whiskey. I didn't want to title this video Vintage Whiskies because we're not going back and drinking true vintages. We're drinking something that's been in glass a long time, which vintage is still a valid descriptor for, by the way. But I wanted to differentiate between something that's of a year vintage. And I also didn't want to use the term old and rare, because a lot of these, they might be old, but they're not very rare. For example, here, this is a 1960s. It's a very worn and forlorn looking Johnny Walker Red. I've had a bottle of Johnny Walker Red before. It wasn't as old as this one. It was a 70s one, a 1970s one. And, I got through it quite quickly. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice whiskey to have. Yes, it's Johnny Walker Red, but it's not the same as the Johnny Walker Red that we would be sipping today. So yeah, I went and picked up this one. I can't remember how much I paid for this. It wasn't cheap, but it was somewhat less than £100, going from memory. So even things like this, that's very old, older than me, this bottle has been in this whiskey has been in this bottle longer than I've been alive, and that's saying something. So I found that to be very interesting. And here's a 1970s version. This is the rounded style, the same as that red one. There's no sharp edges on this. This is a more rounded bottle. So we believe this to be, actually, I think this is more likely to be the 80s because there is a barcode on it. So again, I bought an older version of the Johnnie Walker Black Label, and a 90s one and a contemporary one. And you might remember that I covered those in a previous live stream. So it's kind of expanding on that. Also, this idea that you can go back and taste, perhaps get a snapshot or a glimpse of what the whiskey was like back then, and then compare it to its contemporary and try and fathom not only what has changed, but what I wasn't expecting is that you can fathom some traits, some DNA that connects the whiskey despite it being clearly different over that amount of time. Traits not only in the kind of distillery and the distillate or the blend itself, things that taste kind of similar, but also traits that define this genre of whiskey, flavors that develop in the glass. And I know that the whiskey doesn't mature in the glass. It doesn't legally age. It needs an oak cask to do that. But to consider that the whiskey stays static in glass is not true at all. The whiskey, it's a chemical soup. It develops and it changes over time. And in my experience, it becomes more integrated. It becomes more soft, more rounded. It develops something that's become known oftentimes as OBE, or old bottle effect. And that's kind of open to interpretation from what I understand. But old bottle effect to me is when it develops a kind of, in Scots we would say fusty. So that's this flavour or this smell that you would associate with damp books, with old cellars, maybe almost not quite dunnage, but kind of leathery. If you've ever sat inside an old classic car, or if you've ever gone inside an old library or opened an old book, flavours and aromas similar to that. And it's not from a specific region or distillery. This trait seems to be in the vast majority of these older style whiskies that I've tried, old bottle effect. So I wonder if you guys have tried that kind of whiskey and what your experiences of it are. There are a lot of people out there that swear that whiskies were much better in the 60s and the 70s and even earlier, and certainly the 80s and the 90s. And I understand where they're coming from. Things were different back then. But already by the 70s, you know, we were heavily chasing efficiency. And it was about how much whiskey you could make oftentimes. And I think less focus was on how good could you make the whiskey. And that's still very much true in a lot of cases today, sometimes. But you're not always guaranteed when you go back to those times that you're going to be able to pick a bottle and guaranteed to have a better experience than you would from its contemporary. Whiskey Shared, good to see you, Toby, saying I recently bought an early 80s bottle of Bell's and compared it to a modern version, completely different. I think that's one of the huge takeaways we have to accept at the outset, that virtually guaranteed that it's going to be completely different, and what you end up searching for is those traits, those shared strands of DNA. Jesse voiced this in. Great to see you, Jesse. He's saying, and Barflies, off to my anniversary supper. Catch you on the replay. Safe travels. Great to have you dropping by, Jesse. And thanks so much for watching on the replay, like so many of you do. I really appreciate it. Jimmy Legg is saying, good old OBE. Cresimir is saying, sadly, the auctioneers charge almost £30 to ship one bottle to my country. So for me, it's not affordable. Do they charge £30 for you to save up and buy half a dozen bottles too? That's what the community is good at, Cresimir. And I understand where you're coming from there. If you're buying from auction, shipping is an issue. There are legalities about shipping and things as well. But that's where the community kicks in. And if you've got something nice from where you live, or if you've got something a wee bit different or off the wall, you can hook up with your fellow barflies or other people in the community out in social media channels, a wider whiskey community, and do some trading. And you'll find that there's lots of this kind of style of whiskey, this retro style whiskey around. And it's fun to try. I recently sent, a few months back, actually, it wasn't so recently, I sent a few older Glenfiddichs and Glenmorangys and things, a couple over to Rolf in Norway, because I knew he was curious. And it's nice to share, it's nice to get some feedback, because oftentimes what people want to do immediately is compare it to the contemporary version. Whiskey Wims is saying Aquavita Kilmarnock still stated on the bottle. I believe on the Johnny Walkers I held up there, I believe, yes. Tabitha is saying, reminds me of the stuff I used to steal from my parents' drinks cabinet back in the 70s. You and me both, Tabitha. But the less we say about that, the better. Squinoogie is saying, Aquavita, I recently picked up quite a few cracking Milton Duffs, bottled in the 70s and 80s for next to nothing. I can imagine Milton Duff being a perfect example of that brand, that distillery that's capable of making very interesting whiskies that not a lot of people know about. So you'll see these come up at auction. And if you are scrolling the auctions, what I recommend you do is approaching the end of the auction, is just do a general search and search by price, starting at the cheapest. And there's all sorts of kind of bizarre things that are down at that end. But eventually you scroll through, and you start to get to the bottles. And you will start to come across things. My cousin Kevin is responsible for this Tormore 5-year-old. In the past, he's given me a Deanston 8-year-old, and he was able to kind of stretch his whiskey education at an earlier time in his journey through that curiosity he had for getting his hands on older styles of whiskey for really, really quite low prices. I think both this Tormore and the Deanston that he opened, shared, and then ended up giving the bottle to me, both of them he bought for less than £30-40, I think. Really good value. Graham Stewart, good to see you. Graham is saying, have a couple 1988 and 1984, maybe black bottle. Hope to open soon and share at a whiskey club. Maybe when we do an Isla night. There's a time that black bottle, if it is black bottle you're referring to, I think that's a typo there, Graham. There was a time that was extremely heavily peated. It was the Isla blend, almost black bottle. Whiskey Shared is saying, I caught that comment. I need to try and catch the chat just as it jumps all the way down. Dwayne is saying, Aquavita, back when I began my whiskey journey in 1985. Yeah, you are a veteran, Dwayne. It was with blends, and I drank a lot of JW Red and JW Black at that time. They were definitely different whiskies back then. Of that, there's no doubt. And there was a time as well, we have to remember, when whiskey was booming throughout the post-war years and into the 60s and 70s. And they were really cranking out as much whiskey as they possibly could, opening new distilleries and going through lots of expansion. And then into the early 80s, that all fell apart and whiskey fell out of fashion. There were other competitive drinks on the market to take its place, and stocks built up. And as those stocks built up, they matured. So when you get to the late 80s, the early 90s, the mid 90s, the late 90s, the producers are kind of spoiled for choice. In whiskey, the prices are low. They're not fetching anything like the prices that they've been fetching and continuing to fetch throughout the 21st century. So the blends, in my experience, can often be much nicer, as they were probably adding more mature, more select stock into their blends, just to get the quality as high as it, just to make it as appealing as possible and get whiskey selling. Skippy Van Pob is saying, Aquavita, when my folks had whiskey in the 70s, there was always Crown Royal, which everyone thought was the top of the line. I remember that. And I remember thinking that, the cheap supermarket white label whiskies were the cheap stuff, but branded things like Johnny Walker and things, that was the premium end. And we sometimes forget that as whiskey geeks. Mark Tudor has just sent across a virtual dram saying, hello, champ, glad to be back again and share a dram with you all. Do you have a brother in Australia that's also a YouTuber? Are you serious, Mark? I have a brother, but he doesn't live in Australia. And as far as I'm aware, he's not doing anything on YouTube. He's in the south of England. But Mark, I'll raise a glass and I'll say Slan Shiva. And thank you very much for your virtual dram, my friend. Good to see you here. I'll tell you what I'm sipping right now. This is an early 90s, mid-90s bottle of Gordon MacPhail licensed bottle of Linkwood. So this is still true of today. Gordon MacPhail have their own casks that they'll get filled at Linkwood and they'll mature themselves. And they'll vat these casks and they'll release these licensed bottlings under a long-standing agreement with the distilleries. And this is their Linkwood 15-year-old. As is typical of whiskies of the era, it's 40% ABV, guaranteed to be coloured, guaranteed to be chill filtered, as everything was back then pretty much. And what you'll notice about this as well is it's got this classic old retro screw top. So no cork, as so many of these whiskies over my shoulder do, they have a screw top. But I have to say, this is a soft whiskey. Yes, it's 40%. It's been in the glass a long time. OBE is present, but it's super fruity with lots of toffee and caramel, and it's a nice, engaging dram. And I know from experience, I'm not getting any smoke on this tonight, but if I leave this empty and let the glass dry, I can sometimes get smoke from this. And that's true of another one that I'm going to try a wee bit later as well, that always surprises me. Looks like I've had another dram in as well. We've not missed it. A very, very generous dram from KB. He's not saying anything. He's just saying slancha, KB. Thank you very, very much, my friend. Thank you for that very generous dram as well. Absolutely loved hanging out with you and your other half. That was a wonderful time that we had when we managed to hook up. Sometimes when the folks come in, it's difficult for me to commit right up until I'm right up in front of the date, because family and work and other things always will take priority, of course. But I do love it when I get a chance to meet up with you guys. Phil and Deepa a couple of weeks ago, James, Justine, and Kieran Hammond as well, Whistable Whiskey. Fantastic to meet up with those guys. Jay Chung last night, and KB just a few weeks back. KB, wonderful to see and welcome you here in Glasgow, and thank you so much for your dram, my friend. And I can pretty much guarantee the products like this Linkwood are still kind of kicking around there, maybe in bars and private collections, certainly at auction, and they don't really command ridiculous amounts of money. How much do I think they're actually worth? Well, if you're a collector, they're probably worth a lot more to you. So don't pay too much if you're intending to open these and drink these. If you are just going to drink and share them, you know, they're never going to be interstellar whisky. Some are going to be really lovely. Some are going to be elegant. Some are going to be very fruity and well-rounded and soft. But they're never going to blow your world apart. And even if they did, it might be tough for you to keep a supply of them, right? So don't spend too much and be a bit kind of relaxed about this, because it's a way for you to taste history, really, and expand the context of whiskey in your mind, if that's making any sense. Squinnigy is saying Aquaviti whiskey will always taste better in an STD Glencairn. I agree, and I have one here just out of pure coincidence. There you go. An STD branded Glencairn. Greg's Whiskey Guy is saying, oh, sorry, it's disappeared. Sorry, Greg. If you're trying to get hold of me, let me know. The chat has jumped again. Jay Chung is in as well. I can't keep the chat in one place. Okay, I've caught it again. Max Huss is saying, what auctions do you use? There's a lot of auctions to use. None I could particularly recommend over any other. Whisky Auctions Online, the Whisky Auctioneer up in Perth, ScotchWhiskyAuctions.com in Glasgow. Just the top three that come to mind. But there's a bunch of whisky auctions out there. If you just do Google searches, you'll happen upon them. And I think they are quite supportive in terms of shipping. I think if you're buying individual bottles, it could maybe be expensive, as was pointed out earlier. But I understand that most of them will take care of international shipping and things for you. I've got something here, just before I go on to talk a wee bit more about how we're going to present the theme. I've got a guest waiting in the wings tonight, by the way. I have the Malt Whisky Yearbook. 2020. If you're waiting on this because you've pre-ordered it on Amazon, Amazon's release date for this is the 28th of October at the end of the month. But I was able to pick these up at the Good Spirits Company. And I say these, I buy this every year. I think it's a fantastic book, fantastic reference. And I use it heavily for generating aquavitae quizzes. This is one of the sources I use. Even sometimes when the information in it is wrong, as was pointed out to me earlier today, that the Clynelish distillery has a hell of a lot more than 4,000 visitors per annum. That came up in a previous quiz. And potentially it's been pointed out that it was a misprint in this book. No matter, the majority of what's in this book is really good reading. It's not only distillery information on malt whiskey across the world, not just Scotch, but it's got lots of good editorial content as well. And what I'm going to do is give one away. I bought an extra one from Good Spirits Company well in advance of the Amazon release. It's not a whiskey book until it's shared, so that I could share it with you guys. So at some point, when my guest comes on a wee bit later, there's going to be 2 giveaways. I'm going to give away the drams that we're going to share tonight, and I'm going to give away a copy of the Malt Whiskey Yearbook. So hang around if you're interested, and an opportunity to pick up some freebies later on. Okay, fantastic. So what I thought we would do tonight is, rather than you just sitting listening to my monologue, Ben, Whiskey Geek Ben, was fortunate enough to win a couple of samples from me from last week's show. And as I was putting his package together, I put in 4 of my retro whiskies. I'm not going to share what they were right now, but very soon we will share them, because Ben has been sitting there appraising them in the background, and he's made some notes. And going to give his opinion and give us some feedback on it, and see if he's picked up on any of the traits that I've kind of been talking about here, whether he's picked up any of that old bottle effect, whether he's picking up anything that you would attribute to some of the whiskies that I've shared with him. So I'm going to bring Ben in a wee minute and see how he's getting on with those whiskies, and if he's enjoying them or not. How is he tasting them? Menno is saying, what, you don't know all that stuff by heart, you cheeky quizmaster? I think it would be super interesting, Menno. You might remember a really hard quiz that was set for me by James Hope. I think we need to do that again soon. I think somebody in the community needs to be selected in order to so that I can participate in the quiz as well. And it's like anything, there's no way, we're all on a journey, there's no way anybody can know everything. And I constantly find myself in company that know infinitely more about whiskey in general to me, and certainly about specific aspects of whiskey. And I love listening to them talk. I love listening to them share their knowledge. And I think as you age, it's also tougher to retain that information as well. So yeah, I mean, I use the resources like books and online resources heavily to make the quizzes. It's never fully from my head. Occasionally the questions will be from my own head, but I use other resources heavily for that. So it'd be interesting to see how I got on. I would be happy if I was partaking in my own quiz. I would be happy with a 5 out of 10, a pass mark. Sevi the Alchemist is saying fantastic. He's saying hello to everybody, and he's saying, hi lads, hope we are well tonight. Looking forward, hopefully, if it works out, that we can all meet up in Frankfurt for Into Whiskey. And I've kind of got a rough schedule of how October and November is shaping up for me, and the events and things that I'm attending. And if you guys are attending any of those events or have the ability to, look out for me while I'm there. I'll share those with you shortly. Jimmy Legg is saying, I'm working on a quiz for you. Good for you, Blair. I have no doubt that you are. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, I can set one for you, lol, even if I failed to do 9 or 10 out of 10. Well, that was one of the rewards, that people could contribute questions to the Aquavitae quiz at the end, once they started to score a 10 out of 10, once they achieved that accolade. Whiskey Jason, you're in, you star. Good to see you, Jason. I've shipped your package as well, and I stuck a wee bonus dram or 2 in there, and it should be with you in the coming days. We'd love to set up a whiskey quiz for all of you. The danger is, and it's what we've found in the past, is that often you can get carried away and set a whiskey quiz with a specific person in mind, and maybe pitch it a bit too difficult or a bit too easy. So it's nice to have a kind of mix of questions. And I know I don't always succeed there, but it's nice to have a mix of questions, that some tongue-in-cheek, some fun ones, some production ones, some Whiskey Tube ones, some Scotch whiskey, some world whiskey, just kind of mix it up a bit and try and make it as open as possible, and try and make it okay for people to guess and have some luck guessing as well. But yeah, I'm open to that. That would be a lot of fun. So this Linkwood 15, I think it's lovely. I'm glad I've rediscovered it. This has been open in my cupboard a long time. And they say with these older whiskies that they are a wee bit fragile, and once you open them, you should drink them quickly. I like to gamble a little bit. I like to keep things open a bit longer, and they absolutely soften out and they lose a bit of their vibrancy and their grip and things over time. I've never had one go completely flat that you would consider it being off or awful yet, but I can see how it might be risky. But I don't mind my whiskey changing. If you want to freeze your whiskey in a specific condition at a certain point, by all means use gas or seal the tops, put it in decanters, smaller bottles, however you want to do it, by all means. I just don't. I don't. I'm quite happy doing it. And I'm really enjoying this whiskey tonight after being open for a long time. This is not one of the whiskies I sent to Ben. Pop it up there out of the way. Cressmere is asking if the Linkwood 12 Flora and Fauna is any good. I actually think yes. It's not a whiskey I would be comfortable recommending for everyone. I think Linkwood and the Flora and Fauna guys is quite a subtle whiskey, but it's very good. One of my favourite Ralphie reviews is Linkwood Flora and Fauna. And the reason I enjoy it is because you can see Ralphie just watering it and watering it and watering it to the point that it's I don't know, 50% water in the glass, and he's still getting flavours out of it. Now, it might be that it's not the way that you enjoy drinking your whiskey. That might not be how you want to just enjoy whiskey. But with a lot of whiskies, please, in a bottle, sacrifice 1 dram to drown it. And once you've drowned it, it's gone. Don't worry about it. Just keep adding a wee bit of water. And as you go, as you're nosing it, leave it and come back again. Let your olfactory system reset. And the amount of flavours and aromas that you can pick up, and really, really weakened whiskey sitting down at 25%, 20% is quite surprising. Maybe not if you've stuck your nose in something with high ABV in it. You've kind of anaesthetised yourself. But if you reset and you come back at it, even heavily watered whiskies can give up flavours and aromas that you previously were excluded from. Don't take my word for it. Do it yourself. Practice yourself. See how you get on. Prestige Liquids. Andrew, good to see you saying Aquavite. What is the oldest retro bottle you have had? I can tell you that easily. It was a Hoey blended malt, a 21-year-old blended malt bottled in 1905. So it was distilled in 1884, 19th century whiskey. It was poured for me by Angus McRail at the Old and Rare Show. It wasn't expensive. Okay, it was expensive, but not as expensive as you might imagine. And I carried that dram. I mean, it was bright and tropical and fruity and fresh and delicious. And I carried that dram around the show, and I carried it into a masterclass. And I was sitting next to the guy who writes these books, Ingvar Rond. And I recognised him. He didn't know me from anybody. But we got chatting, and he said, "Why did you bring a dram into the masterclass? Why are you bringing whiskey into a whiskey tasting?" And I said, "Sorry, I'm nursing this. This is a very special whiskey. I don't want to go through it quickly." And he said, "Well, what is it?" And I told him what it was, a 19th century blended malt. And he said, "Oh, can I try?" So that was quite funny. So it's easy, Andrew, for me to answer that. It was an 1884 distilled, 1905 bottled blended malt. And if I close my eyes and think quietly for a minute, I can still taste it now. And that was getting on for a year and a half, 2 years ago. Somebody speaking to Reb Mordecai, that looks like Reb's in, saying use Aquavite to get his attention. Adding some emojis doesn't hurt. Yes, it can be tough. Let me find Reb. If Reb's in here, I'd like to say hello. Reb's one of these guys who's been in and out of the country a couple of times, and I keep missing him. Just the timing hasn't worked out for us to meet yet. Reb, please comment. Tell me what you're after me for. I would like to try and catch your comment if you're here. I'm not seeing it just now as I scroll up, so I may have missed it. My friend Reb, if you're here, it's good to welcome you. Let's scroll down. Help me find Reb. Okay, I'll try and not let the chat jump too fast. Here he is. Reb is saying good evening. I'll be in Scotland in November. Okay, Reb, I hope that the timing works out so that we do get a chance to at least shake hands and maybe enjoy a cheeky dram together in November. That could be fun. Fantastic. So let me bring in my guest to talk about the whiskies that I've shared. I picked randomly 4 whiskies to send down to Ben. Just so that I enjoy watching Ben, enjoy listening to his input on whiskey. I like his the way he analyzes the whiskey, the way he appraises the whiskey. He's very careful. He does it well. Brad is here. He's just bought me a dram, and he's saying, got a jet, but looking forward to hanging out next week. See you in Texas. So Brad is traveling down from Canada to meet up with me and everyone else in Texas next week. That's going to be a fantastic event. But I'll talk to you more a wee bit later in the stream about the events that's coming up over time, because there's a few happening. It's whiskey season. October and November are already looking jam-packed full. So I poured a little bit more of this Linkwood, Brad, so I could raise a glass and say, Sláinte, I'm looking forward to shaking your hand in Texas next week. Sláinte, my friend. So yeah, I was keen when I was packing up those whiskies for Ben to send him a few more. And if he was available tonight, if he could make it, ask him to come on and share what his opinions were, so it's not just me sipping them alone. Unfortunately, Ben is at home just now. He's got a brand new baby, and he's also nursing himself back to health after he was rear-ended in a car accident. But he's fine. He's in good shape, and you'll see him shortly as I bring him into the stream. Ben Marek is saying, anybody mentioned the 25% tariff on imported single malts into the States. A few comments flying in about that. At first, it seemed to me that it was posturing. It was, trade deals and things. And then I discovered that, in fact, the UK and Europe, the EU, has imposed 25% tariff on American whiskies for some time. Which could explain why we get, I mean, when I bought a bottle of Mellocorn, it was £40 I paid for a bottle of Mellocorn. This is like $15 straight whiskey in the States. That could explain some of that away. So I think I would be disappointed. I don't want to see anything choke that thing, and it's always my thing. I know it seems a wee bit overly liberal, but I think when there's a border in place, as soon as you've got something that creates a barrier, as soon as you've got something that stops, something that has to be gotten over, I think it can be claustrophobic. And I think that trade deals have to be mutually beneficial. So right now, what's ultimately, to do with large-scale global manufacturing, it's to do with Airbus and Boeing and things like that. It's to do with steel and aluminium and all of that kind of thing. It would be a shame if we suffered downwind of that on the whiskey side. And I'm not just talking about the guys in the States trying to buy Scotch whiskey or any products from Europe. In fact, it's cheese and all sorts of products, all sorts of other beverages as well. It's not just Scotch whiskey. But I think we directly suffer, which is from what is one of our biggest, if not the biggest, global market for us. It's all a bit silly, and I hope there is an element of posturing in there, and I hope we get over the silliness soon. Hoyt is insane paying my late fee. There's no late fees here, Hoyt. I'm very glad to raise a glass to say Sláinte and thank you for your dram, and wonderful to welcome you in. Late on the replay. I don't mind when it is. Cheers, Hoyt. Another one of the whiskey folk barflies that I was able to meet up with this year. Okay, which brand have, Skogsmard is saying, in your opinion, gone down the hill the most since the 90s? Which have improved the most? Oh, that's a difficult question. I think rather than kind of linear lines going down or up, what tends to happen is that there is some wax and wane. and we find it. And I went off Highland Park for a long time, and then a couple of years ago I got right back into, I was re-enjoying even Highland Park 12 again. But what you tend to find is that there is, and sometimes you have to remember that it's not always the whiskey. Sometimes it's you and where you are in your journey. But there's that tends to be what happens, is that things go off for a little while and then they pull it back again, and then they come on stream and then they kind of go off boil again. And I would say that if you're active in this community right now, everybody knows by the ones that we're all raving about which ones are doing well right now. And everybody knows by the ones that we're not really talking about, the ones that are not really bringing it, either from a quality perspective or more often in the modern times from a value perspective. Okay, let's bring in my guest who's been patiently waiting for the last 45 minutes. Ben Whisky Geek. His channel is Whisky Geek on YouTube. If you don't know Ben, please check him out. He's not producing a lot of content right now, I think, because of the new baby and things, but he's still producing more than Aquavite is in pre-recorded content. Let's bring him in and say, hello, Ben.
Hi, Roy, and hi, Barflies. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, it was wonderful to have you earlier in the year when we enjoyed some whiskies together, and I was able to benefit from your canny analysis of the project that we did together, looking at adding colour to whiskey. And it's great to welcome you back again. How is your health? Are you in good shape? And is everything good at home with the baby, etc.?
Yeah, going really well. He's a great little kid, tiring, but that's to be expected. And the neck spasms have pretty much stopped, so I'm doing all right. All right.
We won't dwell on the car accident situation then. Suffice to say that you're in good shape, right?
Yeah.
Metal fixes and can be replaced. It's harder when it's your health, right?
Yeah, I'm just relieved that Joe and Alfie weren't in the car. That, it could have been much worse.
Absolutely, absolutely. And does your neck function enough in order for you to lift your head and get a sip poured down your neck okay?
Oh, yes. That's seen me through.
I've just had a Dramen from John Oyvind Vel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, John, but he's saying, thoughts on Brexit and whiskey, John? I really try hard not to go political on these shows. I love the fact that whiskey brings us into environments where we can forget about politics and the things that divide us and focus on the things that unite us more. I have lots of thoughts on Brexit and how it's going to affect things in general, but this perhaps is not the environment for it. I hope you'll forgive me, my friend. I will say thank you so much for your virtual dram and raise a glass and say Slanchuva and say that, yes, just don't get drawn into politics is the best thing. Slanchu, my friend. Thanks, John. So Ben, yes, you can sip whiskies, no problem. Good. So did I give a reasonable appraisal? What I've done is I've just sent you 4 random samples. You don't have any idea what I've sent you.
No, I've got some great little blind Aquavite samples with nothing but numbers on them. So I've got my tasting sheets. I've gone through, done my usual geekiness.
Yep.
But all of the details at the top are currently empty. Don't know anything about them.
Okay. And that's not because we're doing some kind of blind challenge or anything here. But what I wanted to do is as you approach these whiskies is just go into them with the minimum amount of preconception, and just kind of share what you got from it, and just see if we can draw some interest from that. And then I can obviously immediately start to reveal what each of them were. Now, I just numbered it 1 to 4 in any order, but you've been able to put it in order of what you found on the nose, right? And you put it in what you felt was the lightest through to the boldest.
Yeah, to try and give me a fighting chance. Cleansing your palate can only go so far. So first thing I did was just a quick sniff to see which was the most aggressive, and I came up with an order which you'd already kind of prearranged. So that's reassuring, at least.
Well, I did, and what I did, that we arranged the exact same order, just completely without realizing that. And what we've actually ended up with, if I'm correct, is 1, 3, 2, 4. So we've only swapped around the middle 2 based on how I labelled the bottles. But that's not relevant for the folks watching. They just need to kind of know that we're sipping and smelling the same dram at the same time.
Yeah.
So if we stick our nose, I know what I'm looking for here, and I think it's quite obvious on the nose, but it always is when you know what you're sipping. But it'd be great to hear what you got from, we're both about to approach dram number 1, right?
Yeah. I'll just quickly fly through my notes if you like.
Perfect. The stage is yours.
I found the colour to be Manzanilla, about shade 2. It's quite a light gold. The initial notes that I was getting on the nose, it was a touch solventy, which came through as a faint white wine vinegar, perfumed, possibly paint thinner, not particularly cloying, but a little bit. Floral and dry grass behind that. A kind of synthetic fruitiness, almost like a boiled sweet. And then raisins and dark sugars. It kind of reminded me of tired sherry casks. It wasn't sherry forward. So the nose was quite easy approaching, and there was nothing particularly sharp to it. It was a quite a homogeneous nose.
Fantastic. Does anybody else enjoy listening to notes like that? I mean, that's just a great summary. I'm with them on almost everything. I didn't get too much of the tartness. I didn't get too much of the vinegar, but I'm with you on everything else. And where you pick up on the fruit, almost like you mentioned, like a boiled sweets or a confectionery fruit, I get that. But for me, there's a strong tinned peach or pineapple.
That's interesting, because coming onto the palate, one of the first things I put down is peach. Peach, more of those sweets, but a really quite bold peach. It's really nice, it's fresh, it's a sweet entry. There's peach, the sweets, grassy, and a floral development as it kind of mellows out on your palate. The grass returns. Very soft, woody tones develop, but they're still behind this sweetness. Again, some vanilla, and a gentle warmth from spices. Bit of barley showing, and it's kind of reminiscent to me of Golden Promise, which is a strain of barley which Glengoyne and Macallan use, and I think there's another distillery that use it as well. You asked me to pick out anything that was, similarities reminiscent to me.
I wonder how much production is actually still on Golden Promise now. But you're absolutely right. Back when this product I'm going to share with you was made, probably Golden Promise was much more prevalent. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in here. I would be shocked, amazed, and super impressed if it was and you picked it out. That would be something else. That would be different level stuff. But yeah, widespread throughout the 80s and 90s, Golden Promise is a barley strain. I would say that, I don't want to kind of put you in the spot, but if you feel like there's a genre or a specific style of whiskey or distillery or something that you would associate this with, go ahead just before I reveal it to everyone.
I would have put it as quite a soft Highland. I kind of, when you're doing things blind, I always get this horrible thing where the first idea I get to, I can't shake out of my head, but I went full circle. I think I went Glengoyne, Balblair, and there was another one in there, and I was just kind of going around in circles. I couldn't quite pin it down.
Yeah, I mean, I think on younger Glengoynes, you'd be looking, there's often a wee bit of a leather in it. On the Balblairs, you would get honey. But you've nailed it. A soft Highland is exactly what this is. This is Glenmorangie. This is the 10-year Glenmorangie. And I've had this on the show before on a live stream. I compared this to the modern-day contemporary Glenmorangie. Where I felt that this was interesting is I fully believe, and you've identified, that there are lots of traits and DNA in this that you can connect directly to modern day Glenmorangie, right?
Yeah. And the modern day Glenmorangie is not the 10-year-old, not one that I've chimed with that well. It's very easy, but there's something about this which appeals to me just slightly more. Something that it kind of fits into what you described as the old bottle effect. Just that kind of everything's kind of homogenized and it's settled together really well.
It's softer and rounder. And I think it's almost, as I was talking earlier, I think I've had another super chat in, and I don't want to miss these as they come in. It's from KB again. He's raising another glass and he's saying, cheers, drinking a dram of SMWS 3106 to your health. Ben, hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, KB. You're a star. Thank you so much. Raised a glass to your health, KB, and of course, Ben as well. Slanchiva.
I've run out. I've only got empty glasses.
wonderful gesture. I'll find a way to share that with you, Ben.
Don't worry about it.
So I felt that, there were things in this Glenmorangie that was consistent with modern Glenmorangie. I think if I didn't go back and watch the live, but I think if you went back, I would, from memory, the modern one was brighter and fresher and a bit more vibrant, as you would expect. But there were things that connected it. Now, what I remember detecting at the time, I'm not detecting it tonight, and I notice you haven't mentioned it in your notes, but please keep that glass to the side when it's empty. Come back at it when it's dry and maybe cap it off with a coin or something, but put your nose back in it and tell me if you pick up smoke. An Aquavite coin is perfect, but any coin, any of the Whiskey Tube channel coins will do. Thank you for having mine. But you're getting no smoke on the nose whatsoever right now.
I wasn't, no, and that's not something that I typically associate with Glenmorangie. So it'll be interested to go back to it and see.
There would have been a time in the deep and distant past that Glenmorangie would have been probably much smokier than you might imagine. But I remember getting it that night, and certainly since I've sipped this since then, and this is the way to do it, even if you're drinking something with really soft smoke, if you go back and smell the dry glass, that's when smoke, for me anyway, in my opinion, in my experience, tends to show itself even when it's super soft.
Yeah, I found you get some really weird flavors come through on an empty glass sometimes. Particularly the night after, if you come down to wash a glass, and I've had blue cheese, I've had all sorts. That's
right. I call it the lazy git. But it's a good thing, especially if you can pick up something nosing that dry glass that maybe the next time you go back to that dram, you can pick up.
Yeah.
That previously you didn't. Do you want to move on to what is number 3, but it's our second dram?
Sounds good.
But I'm impressed. I'm super impressed by your tasting notes on this, Ben. I would say that if I was cynical and if I was watching this from the outside, I would think I'd shared with you what I've sent you, but I have not. That was your absolutely white paper tasting notes, and you picked it out as a light Highland. That's super impressive.
It probably goes downhill from here, so
I'd be surprised. Let's have a wee. I've not tried to trick you in any way. I've only picked things that I thought would be interesting to talk about, and this one I find a little bit interesting as well.
So I've got it poured. This is number 3. So I've put this one down as shade 5, white burgundy. On the nose, I found it initially, it was a little bit muddled. The first nosing of it was very busy, and you had to let it kind of disperse to actually get anything particular from it. But what did initially hit you, and this was all done prior to your lead into this, was this musty wood and sawdust. That was what was coming through boldest. Some spiciness, I describe it as like a fuzzy spice. It's like almost got a textural component to it. It was kind of hard work. Again, you had to tease the flavors out of it, but got some almond, peach. It was a little bit floral, but it's all hidden behind these organic tannins. And I didn't think, I guess you did give me a little warning. I was thinking maybe that you were trying to catch me out here. I didn't think that it was necessarily particularly old, but it was an aged cask. Maybe, you were getting that tired wood influence.
That's super interesting. It's interesting that you pick out that kind of woodiness. I get that there. You've identified it as a kind of sawdust thing. A little bit. To me, this is a wee bit more citric than the one we had before. But it's not bright fresh citrus. It's kind of soft, right? Like maybe an overripe tangerine type thing, or some cooked.
Yeah. Again, like the edges have kind of been curved on it. It's been rounded off a little bit. No longer sharp. Then going on to the palate, I found it to be very soft, verging on bland almost. This was my least favorite, and this is without knowing what it is, so I could be slagging something off here, which everyone loves. It was my least favorite of the four. There was a maltiness, a little bit green, then this kind of peach yogurt, little soft stone fruit yogurt-y tone, a little bit creamy, and the tannins I found from the nose had pretty much gone on the palate. I couldn't find them anymore.
For me, there's a tartness, especially obvious on the mid palate. And the reason I think that's really cool is I get it on this particular distillery. I get that a lot. And I would like to say that depending on the company I was sipping this distillery in, I think I could pick it out if it showed that trait. But it's here. But what's super interesting about the fact that it's here is the well, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to summarize it yet because I would like you to have a stab and see if you can get as close as you did on the Glenmorangie guess. Where would you place this one?
I'm a little bit lost with this one because I found it to be so bland. That's something that you don't really come across in a modern expression. But because I'm finding it so soft and quite squashed, I would almost lean towards a lowlands, but not a lowlands as I know it. A lot of lowlands distilleries are now closed, so possibly one of those. But then your comment about still picking it up, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not a closed distillery, but it is an under the radar distillery. But it is a distillery that's loved by many. There's one character in particular who loves this.
That I've offended.
Sorry?
One character in particular I've offended.
This character has thicker skin than you might imagine. I don't think it's possible to offend him. Don't worry about that. But I'll tell you what this is. This is, and I've shown this on the show before, this is a Tomoa.
Okay.
But it's 5 years old. This is an Italian bottling. This is the hand grenade bottle, 5 years old. The Italians are quite happy with 5-year-old whiskey, thank you very much, and they should be applauded for that. But this goes back to the 90s, I believe, maybe the late 80s. 5 years old malt, so of course it's the youngest component in here. There could be, especially given the era, there could be older malt in here as well. But what's interesting about it is that there is a trait that, to be polite about it in Tomoa, I often pick out as a kind of tart grapefruit. For this, in this dram, it's mid-palate. I pick it up, and it's here. It's bizarre that it's here in the DNA, but it's utterly softened and almost flattened out by that kind of that roundness, that softness we're talking about from being in glass for so long. This was a bottle, as I've already mentioned, was given to me by my cousin Kevin, and he opened this fresh. So this has been 30 years potentially in a sealed bottle, and you can taste how soft that's become in that time. It's super soft. You would imagine a 5-year-old spirit, even though it's 40%, you would imagine a 5-year-old spirit to be much more spirity than this, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of these older whiskies display, is this idea of being smoother, softer, rounder. And that can sometimes give us the impression that perhaps the whiskey was better quality back then, when it's not. It's just really, it's had time to change and morph in the glass. So yeah, this is a Speyside from an under the radar distillery, Tomoa. It's a fairly large distillery owned by Pernod Ricard. Pretty much everything that it produces, of course, goes into blends. It's not very well represented. It's not very well celebrated, which is a shame, because I think there's enough character in this distillery that it should be.
It's one that
it's very dry and short on the. There's a bitterness on the aftertaste as well. Are you picking that up?
Yeah. What I said essentially was that it was very short on the finish, a little woody, tannins returned, and there was that spicy, fuzzy warmth again. But it was a short, concise finish. Tomoa is a distillery that I don't think I've ever tried before, so that is a new one on me. And Speysides, although they're one of the most, the most prominent region, it's not a region I've explored all that much.
Speyside, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I do appreciate your comments that this is probably a blander, softer one compared to maybe the others that we have here. But as an experience, especially as a 5-year-old whiskey, and I know how little Kevin paid for this, this is the kind of whiskey that you should be looking out for if you can pick these up, if you want to taste some of these notes and characters and things that we're talking about.
Yeah. Can I respond to a comment from Macallan Fine and Rare, because it did make me chuckle?
Macallan Fine and Rare, the doc is always making us a chuckle. Where was it? Was it a recent comment or is it a bit further
No,
up?
it was a little while back, but I didn't want to spoil your flow. He said, if there are organic tannins, are there inorganic tannins? He knows full well that there aren't, but it's something that I've got into the habit of saying when they are particularly organic tannins. You know, people know tannins from the wine industry, so you can get kind of Hessian and old rope and that kind of thing, and that's quite a tanninic body as well. But a lot of people don't really know what a tannin is or what tannins are, and it's very different to what you find in wine. So I've just kind of, it's become part of my vocabulary to tag that word on to help people get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and certainly it helps me when people use that. And that's one of the good things about when you sip in company, you sip together, because you become conversant in each other's vocabulary and you understand how to interpret what you're experiencing. And when you sip together, you can help each other bring out things that the other one misses.
Yeah, definitely.
And everybody says, oh, it's just the power of suggestion. Sorry, it doesn't matter if it's the power of suggestion. If somebody suggests and you taste it, you know, does that make it not real? No, of course not. It's just, you know, two minds coming at it from a different approach. And
we'll get onto that with sample number 4, huh?
I think so. I think so. Per is saying, hi, Roy, great show tonight, and good to see Ben is okay. Get better soon, mate. And he's bought me a generous virtual dram as well. Per, you're a star. Thank you so much. You're always on here supporting as well. It's wonderful to see you, my friend. Slanchova to you, my friend, Per. Yes, and I agree. It's good to see Ben on as well, and it's good to see him healthy despite his recent drama. George Braley saying aquavitae, it helps describe the taste. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's difficult. And I remember, I think even earlier tonight, before we went live tonight, you and I were talking about how at a time in my life, I felt a little bit self-conscious and awkward about describing what I was tasting in whiskey, because it could often sound to people that hadn't stepped inside that bubble yet as a bit pretentious. And I wasn't meaning to be pretentious at all. I was just really excited that I could taste all of these things in the same glass together. It was bizarre to me. It was completely. I felt silly that I'd spent so many years not engaging with whiskey. I couldn't believe how much experience, engagement, how many flavors there were in a glass of whiskey. Yeah. So I think that you need to find yourself in company where you're not judged for enjoying yourself.
This is something that's key for me as a younger guy and trying to tap into, you know, my friends and family, trying to pull people into it. I was recently I did a video for patrons on tasting tips, and rule number 1, something I always emphasize at the beginning of an introduction or a tasting or whatever, is that you're not wrong. It's so heavily subjective. It doesn't matter whether no one else is tasting the same thing as you. If it's what you're tasting, have the confidence to say it, because your palate, your experiences are leading you to believe that. So you're not wrong.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than coming out with a tasting note and having the people that you're sitting with going, yeah, and absolutely getting it. But don't be put off. If you taste it, say it.
Yeah.
Say it. Because
100%.
As you express, I know that it's good practice to write down like you do. I write down less, much less. It's very good to do that as well. But you start to build a library. And you know what? If people start to judge you for the enjoyment that you're having, ask them to do it along with you and then judge. Because they only need to get one tiny little sliver of the light that you're seeing, and suddenly they're intrigued, in my experience anyway. George was asking, has Ben still got his Dalmore 12?
You're not going to make me drink it on stream again, but yes, I
I'm
do.
I'm not going to make you do anything. Absolutely not. He's curious. Yes, George, he's hanging on to about 3 or 4 grams left in that bottle. Sunday Evening Scotch is saying, totally agree, repower of suggestion. So many notes, with the exception of maybe vanillins from oak, none of these components are actually there. It's perception, and no one is wrong. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I agree with you that sometimes you need somebody to come at it from a different angle and find different things in there. You know, you're finding vanillins and you're finding toffee and caramel, and then somebody doesn't taste any of that. They just taste right through to the fruit. And suddenly you cancel out all the vanilla that you had, and you're just tasting the fruit that the other person has brought along, and it's I think it's great, and I think it's nice to sit at home and analyze your whiskey however way you like to do it. But I always find that it's kind of nicer to do this with company, and in company that you don't need to feel self-conscious about doing it either. I know that we are completely aligned there, Ben. What would you say then? Would you say that that's your least favorite of these two?
Yeah, that one, I did give them, I know people don't like ratings, but I gave that one about a 4 out of 10, which was the lowest.
Fine. That's fine. What would you give the first one? Did you give it a score?
I did, yes. That one, 6 of 10.
Good. Are we ready to pop our nose in number 3?
Yeah, let's do it. So this is sample 2. Third one we're addressing, sample 2. I've put the colour down as shade 13, Old Madeira. It's considerably darker than the previous 2. Initially, what you hit with on the nose is this full warmth. It's really got a nice body to it, and it's an odd thing to say about a nose, but it's really filling your nostrils, but it's not cloying. It's filling it with all kinds of aromas. I'm getting roast hazelnuts, dark sugars. It's kind of wintry without being heavily sherry forward, I find. Like, this is almost a Christmassy dram. Malty, spiced warmth, and some like whole grain loaf. And then as it kind of breathes, it lets out this lovely caramel tone.
That's a fantastic tasting notes, Ben. Absolutely love listening to that. Just fantastic. I think I would never have picked out the hazelnut thing, but it's there.
I've been one thing.
Almost the kind of winter, the Christmas themes are there. You're taking me down a route where I'm thinking about cinnamon spice and nutmeg and things as well now.
Yeah, kind of going towards mulled wine without the wininess kind of thing. All those spices coming together. One thing that I lost myself in Bruichladdich recently, and they have done a few where they've been aging in European oak, and suddenly all of these nutty, spicy tones just from the wood started to really become prominent to me, and it's just where my palate's at the moment. Those things are really
what we need to do
out.
there is dwell on the fact that we're talking about European oak. We're not talking about sherry cask, which gets confused. We're specifically speaking about European oak and the influence of that. I just want to mention Vicky Thompson as well said, have a great time in Texas. She's bought me a virtual dram as well, and she said, I hope we get to share a dram soon. Vicky, you're unfortunate because you're in Scotland, so I make less of an effort for the people who live here. But that would be fantastic. And I know you're in Edinburgh, and perhaps one time that I'm through at the vaults or something like that, I should shout out and maybe get a chance to share a quick dram or a handshake. But thank you so much, Vicky, and Slanchva. I'm finding this one much more. You used the word full when you were talking about on the nose. It's there on the palate as well. It's quite big and rounded on the palate.
Yeah, but rounded still. That there is nothing jarring. There's nothing sticking out. It's still smooth, and it's got this full body without there being anything that's coming for you. No aggression.
But there is still that OBE thing, that old bottle effect is happening. It's still there. It's there. You can smell it. You can taste it. And even on the finish, on this one, I'm finding it on the finish. And I'm getting smoke on the finish as well. Are you getting any smoke?
I'm not. No. What I'm getting is more of like a roast espresso. It's similar, I think, but it's kind of a bitter coffee type of tone. Interesting.
Coffee is spot on. Absolutely.
Building on what you're saying about that OBE, I've got musty wood at the back with loads of sweetness on top, caramel, apricot, malty, roast espresso, and as it breathes, this musty wood with the sweetness on top comes through.
Fantastic. And I fully agree. But for me, there's just a whiff of peat smoke. Took me by surprise. I wasn't looking for it, but it's there on the finish. Soft, quiet peat smoke. Again, I think this is one of those ones that you leave the glass dry and go back to it. It'd be cool if you sent me a text message or something if you did that, and tell me if you've got any smoke on the Glen. Please stick your nose in the Glenmorangie before this one and the next one that we're gonna try.
This is very much a blind spot for me at the moment. Soft peat goes way under my radar because after visiting Islay back in March, I've been drinking possibly 90% peated malts. So I'm very much at the higher end of things at the moment.
It's real. It's absolutely real. And I've talked about it at length. People that have been following me for any amount of time know that it's real. The more peaty whiskies that you enjoy, the less sensitized you are to peat. And the more peat you go looking for in order to get that peat hit. The reason why Octomores, Supernovas, and all these fantastically peated whiskies are so successful, because the peat heads out there want that peat connection. But it doesn't take long to reset. I'm finding that if you take a couple of days off and then go back and enjoy some really light, delicate, elegant drams, by the time you go back to a soft peat, you're starting to pick it up again. In my experience, it doesn't take that long to reset.
Part of my trying to stay healthy is not to drink for a minimum of 2 consecutive days a week. So I may have to stretch that out to a full week or something to try and do a reset now. I'm that far gone, that far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean as well, and I think it's good to have that ratio. And even when you are on drinking nights, don't drink until you're blurry. Just take it easy. When you start to feel the warm glow of it and things, and probably know you've had enough, you want a good night's sleep. You don't want to, because there are nights out there. You'll go to tasting events, you'll go to social evenings and things, and you'll end up in that situation. So save it for those nights and the nights that you're sipping at home. Yes, responsible drinking should always be a theme of all of our content, I think. Reb is saying Aquavite, misunderstood term. European oak means cask was made in Europe, usually Spain. The oak type is almost always a QA American white oak, either grown in Europe or imported from the US. Specifically, I'm speaking about Quercus robur. I'm talking about European oak. I'm talking about slower growing, harder to cooper, the traditional Spanish, French oak type. I'm not talking about Quercus alba that has been imported. I'm not talking about Quercus alba that's been grown in Europe. I'm specifically speaking about the traits and flavors that we get from rarer, more expensive European oak. Thanks, Red. The Alchemist is saying, he's talking to Multi-Hagsmuncher, who's very lucky. He's passing by Valhalla's Goat and saw one on the shelf. Amazingly, they had 4. So he's talking about the Kilkerran. I don't have it here. It's downstairs. Through a heads up from Sevi, he told me that one of the stores in Glasgow, Valhalla's Goat, still had Kilkerran single cask left. When I went out to the shop, there was a bottle put aside with my name on it, thanks to Sevi, the Alchemist. He's a star. And the people at Valhalla's Goat, which is a cool little shop in the West End of Glasgow, really is, often with... still some allocated stock from the Springbanks and things like that. North Star Spirits still available on the shelf after they've gone elsewhere. So I was very grateful to get my hands on, as anybody that watches the channel will know how much I love Kilkerran, and I'm glad to get my hands on the single cask. Okay, what do we think about this dram number 2, which we're drinking third in order? What would be, now that you've appraised it and you've kind of given your opinion, what do you think it is? What do we have in front of us?
That's a really good question. I would go back towards the Highlands, I think, for this one. It could be Highland Park, but it's missing what I associate with current Highland Parks. I've got one of these old taster sets, and what struck me with the old 12 in that was that it was lacking that soft smoke. And since you're talking soft smoke, I'm kind of tying 2 and 2 together in my head. So maybe that's completely misleading.
I think Highland Park is a great shout for this, because I can see how you would... The profile of this is very Highland Park-ish. Yeah. Maybe Highland Park would maybe be a wee bit more vegetal, a wee bit more earthy. But yeah, and as I'm sitting, if I've got this in my mouth just now, there's another kind of Highland Park trait there, and that's a kind of orange marmalade thing going on, and the finish and the aftertaste. But your appraisal of it when you talked about it being full and rounded was spot on, because this is a blend.
Okay.
This is a 1990s Johnny Walker Black 12-year-old.
That's interesting.
Yes. Because you were enjoying it, right?
Yeah, and I do enjoy the current Black which some
As do
people
I.
would be ashamed to admit, but I really do enjoy it. But what I find quite bold in the current one is this maltiness. It's really evident, and it's there, but it's quite subdued here. It's really in the background, nowhere near as obvious as the current stuff.
Yeah, I would say that that's a good shout as well. I think that the benefit we have from Johnny Walker Black is the age statement. We know that everything's 12 years plus, and I think that comes across in the experience when you're enjoying it as well. I never have any shame in sharing that I enjoy Johnny Walker Black. I think you're a fool if you do go about saying that there's anything particularly wrong with this, apart from it is a bit soft, I would say. But that's probably down to ABV and things, even the contemporary ones.
And the intended audience.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're poured this blind on a social occasion, if you're just out and about and enjoying it, and somebody brings you a JW Black neat, it's delicious. It's easy to enjoy, and I think it's real fun to get your hands on this, because the older ones from the 80s and 90s can be as cheap as picking up a bottle of contemporary Johnny Walker Black. So keep your eyes out for it, because as you've just experienced, that's a nice taste of history that you've got there, right?
Yeah. And I'd also comment to say that when I've been putting my notes together for the recent Johnny,
sorry, say that again.
I've been putting together my notes for the recent Johnny Walkers recently, and I struggled to find the smoke on the current black as well. I could find it on the double black, but the single black is.
Well, I would have to agree
lost.
with you. And I wasn't, as I said earlier, I wasn't looking for it. But just on the finish, and probably because we've been drinking such delicate whiskies tonight, the Linkwood I had, the Glenmorangie, and the Turmore, I think that it just gave up a little wisp of. It wasn't. You mentioned barbecue. It wasn't like a soot smoke.
Yeah.
It was more like a sweet peaty smoke. I don't know if I'm making any sense there, but it was there on the finish, ever so slightly.
Yeah, not all peat's equal. Certainly not.
Sorry?
Not all peat is made equal. There's many different variations.
Exactly that. And I think Highland Park, guessing Highland Park was I can see exactly why you would come out with Highland Park on that. Absolutely. I've got a couple of Highland Parks here behind me. I'll just switch to my screen if I can, just to share this. Here we've got the 12-year-old. We've got 3 different renditions of the 12. One from, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s. One from more recently, and the brand new kind of Viking Honor series here. And I've got the same up the top here. You'll see the Viking Pride, I think they call the 18 there, and an old 18 Highland Park. That 18-year-old Highland Park, the old one, is really, really good. The 12-year-old Highland Park in the same packaging is awful. It is absolutely awful. And I don't know if I've got a problem with that bottle or something. I don't know if it's if there's a bit of corking or something going on, but you take that vegetal, earthy Highland Park note and just crank it right up to 11, and it's there. I don't think sitting in glass over time, I don't think that Highland Park 12 has benefited at all. Right. I think it might have an odd bottle there. I would have to say that is approaching undrinkable, which is why I chose not to send that to you. But if you are willing to try it, I'd be very happy to put it in a bottle and send it down to you. It is bizarre. But I'd also probably send along the 18 as well, because that is quite enjoyable.
Well, I'm starting to feel guilty for not sending anything back all these times now, but I'm up for trying whatever you want to give me.
It's not what it's about. There doesn't have to be deliberate swapping happens. It naturally ebbs and flows, and it comes back to you. Talking of which, I have treated you. In my opinion, I've treated you to this last dram. Let's see what you think of this as I look back into the comments. From Germany, Whiskey Babblers, and good to see you saying I have 3 different HP12 from old 92,000. I like them much. Which ABV do you have, Aquaviti? Unfortunately, this one is just the standard stuff that was available in supermarkets here in the UK. 40% ABV, standard 70 cl bottling. This is, they call it the Sunset bottle, I think. But I'll have a wee smell of this. It's bizarre. I mean, the cork is in very good shape. There doesn't look to be anything obvious contamination in the cork, but it does smell like it could be corked. It's really not nice. I'm happy to send something that's awful to you, Ben. There you go. Everyone does St. Aquavitae. I wonder if the distilleries do lots of focus group tastings to change the formula for an expression such as when they did New Coke versus Classic. I'm sure it's not on that scale, but I think they do. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, can you show it again? Old HP 12, please, Roy. Yep. And I'll also grab this 18. The 18 it's the same packaging almost, but the 18 has the standing stones and the 12 has, I'll open up this camera so that you can see Greg, so if you're listening to this podcast style, this isn't interesting for you, but for the folks that can see the video here, they want to see these bottles. I hope you can see those okay. Both are 40%. Oh no, I'll make a correction. The 18-year-old is 43%, in fact.
I think I've talked to Greg about that 12-year-old before, and he quite likes it, which is possibly why he's looking for more detail.
All, more pointing to the fact that it could be that I've got a kind of corked or tainted bottle. Okay, so let's approach this fourth dram. And I think before we went live tonight, you commented that this was very intriguing.
Yeah. So I got around to nosing this one just as we started talking before the live. So this is number 4, and it just hit me. And this one, by far and away, was the most engaging for me. Building on previous comments about what I've been drinking recently, that's no surprise. But I've put this down as shade 13, Old Madeira. It's got a good, healthy kind of burnished gold to it. Straight away, it's this musty, fusty tone. Fusty is something which I'm familiar with because I've got a Scottish wife. She's explained to me how it's this damp kind of mulchy tone. It's rich, it's deep, seaweed, mulchy, earthy peat. Herbal, Lapsang Souchong, and this green leaf herbs, damp wood, spices, cloves, oily. You can kind of find a bit of everything. It's when you go looking, I'm kind of going, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I can pick out a bit of fruit, a bit of sweetness, and it's giving you kind of everything that you look for. It's just so full, and for me, extremely engaging.
I agree fully. What's amazing is that when I show you how little there is left in this bottle, how much I've been hanging on to it, and I've had this bottle a long time, and I've shared it heavily. Lots of people have experienced this with me, and I have to say that each time I try it, it gets better and better, and I'm talking about it being down at a very low level now, and this has still had the power, and it still had the integrity to hold together. This has not broken apart. It's not become fragile or brittle. It's still a full-on, enjoyable, tasty experience, right?
Yeah, 100%. This is the kind of dram that I'd sit with at my desk, and I'd probably spend 15, 20 minutes just nosing it and appreciating it before I even got around to sipping it.
Absolutely. Whiskey Babbler from Germany's bought a virtual dram for us, Ben, and he's saying, love our whiskey passions. Thanks for hosting the vPub. Thanks for attending the vPub, my friend. And perhaps, Whiskey Babbler, if you're attending Inter Whiskey in Frankfurt later this year, we'll get a chance to shake hands and say hello. Slancheva, my friend. Thank you.
Slanche.
For me, this is rich and fruity. And it's fruity in a way that's you could be led in any direction of fruit. You could talk about like a ripe aromatic melon. You could talk about tropical notes like that. You could talk about some kind of dark chocolate orange. Chocolate orange is a good one, actually. The smoke is there, but the smoke is utterly inside the whiskey. It doesn't sit on top or around the sides, or it's not a back. It's not behind the whiskey. It's in the whiskey. It's in every sip. It's fully integrated.
Yeah,
This is a wonderful whiskey to me.
Yeah, 100% totally agree. It's this wonderful, smooth, rounded peat, but it's so closely integrated, so closely linked to this damp Dunwich warehouse woodiness. And I'm fairly sure that this is a Lagavulin because it is reminiscent not only of the casks I tried at the warehouse, but just of sitting in amongst the casks, that body of aroma that comes from the aging casks.
Well, you mentioned Lapsang Souchong tea, didn't you?
Mm.
Which is a trait or a flavour that people find in a certain Isla whiskey. And you mentioned Lagavulin. I can tell you that you kicked it out the park on that one, Ben. This is Lagavulin. This is Lagavulin 16, but it's not Lagavulin 16 as we know it. This is there's a few giveaways, and I'll share it for the people that can see the video, or I guess you could listen to this as well. But on the oval label at the top, we've got a royal warrant here, whereas in the modern contemporary bottling, that's a little sailboat motif now. 1816 in Isla, written next to that label is written in gold leaf. It's painted on in gold leaf, whereas the modern bottles, this is embossed. Down at the bottom, it's got a passage talking about moss water, something to look out for. That's different from the contemporary ones. And but the big giveaway is right at the bottom. It says White Horse Distillers Glasgow. So this is the famous and much celebrated White Horse Lagavulin that's long gone. This was back in the days when probably there was a lot more sherry cask involved, and I think you can taste that on the sipping experience. And it suffered hugely from batch variation over the years, but when you get a good one, and I think this is one of the good ones, you have a fantastic experience with it. And this bottle has softened and got richer as it's gone down. It's lost a wee bit of its edge and vibrancy that it enjoyed at the top, but it's become, to me, it's become a wee bit better. But I can understand how some people, they might not agree and they might enjoy a wee bit more of the kind of grip and spice that it had at the top. However, what I would say about this is there's no barcode or anything on it. It's a UK bottling. It's 75 CL, so we know it predates the homogenization of 1992. But the rest of the things, like the gold leaf and the royal warrant, point to it being late 80s. Now, that's pretty interesting because if this is Lagavulin 16 from, say, 1988 when Classic Malts first launched, potentially you're sipping something then that is made from when Lagavulin had their own floor maltings. Certainly there's a significant component of this, if not all of it, potentially from Lagavulin's own floor malting days.
It's really interesting.
So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And this is probably the most expensive, of course, bottle that we're going to taste tonight. I don't know how much it would cost you to buy this now. This cost me £120 some years ago. I think it's probably twice or three times the order of that now, maybe a bit more. But I've enjoyed every sip and I've enjoyed sharing this bottle. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Well, I've really enjoyed having it shared with me. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Very impressive, Ben. Very impressive. In case Ben needs any more selling than he's already demonstrated, this is the type of thing that he brings to his channel all the time. He's very meticulous. He's thoughtful about the whiskey that he's sipping, and he comes at it. I have to say that your bias, if it exists, it doesn't show. I think you're very open in approach to all of the whiskies. We all have our favourites, of course, but I like the way that you approach and appraise whiskies. I enjoy watching you, Ben, and I hope you keep doing it. And I hope you keep doing it.
Well, I'm enjoying myself, so I'm planning to.
Yes. Kresimir is agreeing. Ben has a nice palate. I agree, Kresimir. He definitely does. And Whiskey Freedom is saying Aquavite has a good poker face. Do you think so, Whiskey Freedom? Do you honestly think so? Fraser, I would have to say that it's not something I'm known for, my poker face. Greg's Whiskey Guide nailed it as well. He's saying, my guess is you sent Ben a Lagavulin from the early 1990s. Greg, you're spot on. Whiskey Geek, so funny to see the colour difference between the two of you. This is Macallan Fenarella Doc is saying, you're drinking the same whiskey. Wow. You know, there's no controls for me to control the white balance on this new camera. I just go with the default, which tends to give me a pink face, but I don't mind. Maybe I'm a wee bit pink in real life. Ben, you're looking pretty natural to me, so probably your white balance is a bit more accurate.
I've had to mess with it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're going a bit pink now. What I have to do is it's directly relevant to the colour of top that I'm wearing. So the shirt that I wear changes the white balance. Everwind is saying, great show, got to run, listen to the drive home, fair winds, Whiskey Malt Mates. Fair winds back to you, Everwind, as well. Pick it up on the way home and on the replay. Thank you so much for dropping by. Neil Cochran is saying, fantastic vPub tonight. Neil Cochran has nailed a 10 out of 10 on a couple of recent quizzes. Talking of quizzes, what time is it? We're 20 after 11. Wow, we need to get the wheels on. We're really knocking on for time. I've been talking a lot again. Skonugi is saying, Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, Ben is good, yes. I agree. Roy has a face perfect for podcasts. Skonugi, thank you so much, my friend. You're welcome here anytime. Dwayne Large is saying, and Whiskey Geek, good job, Ben. I agree. James McGoran is saying, I just thought it was your Spanish tan aquavite. Yes, we are pale blue. We have to tan pink first. That's true. Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's head towards the quiz. But what I want to do is ask Ben if he wants to stay and join us for the quiz like you did last time.
Yeah, please. I'm up for making a fool of myself again.
Not at all. I don't think you will. It's tricky, and of course, these things you only know if you know. What I will do is I'll share with you a couple of things. I've of course mentioned that I'm doing a podcast with Matthias over the course of the next few days, recording that with him. Look out for that on his channel, Ear Whiskey. I'm also doing a recorded interview with Eric Way, and we're going to discuss a recent tour that we did, and we visited one of the new distilleries in Scotland, Annandale, down close to the borders. And Eric wants to do a pre-recorded session with that. Look out for that on the Eric Way channel as well. There's lots of events coming up. I'm just going to share with you a rough schedule of events that I'm going to be attending, so that if any of the whiskey folk out there are going to be able to get to those events or perhaps already arranged that, I'd like to say hello. Please don't be shy. Come up and introduce yourself. The 5th of October is Saturday coming, which is the Stirling Alhambra Whiskey Festival in Stirling. Excuse me, some of the Lagavulin coming back up there. In Stirling, I'm going to be at that event, so if anybody, I think there are still tickets available for that. If anybody's struggling to get tickets, you can do a Google search for Alhambra Stirling Whiskey Festival for the 5th of October, but get in touch with me directly if you're struggling to get tickets. I might be able to help you out there, but that's on the 5th of October. Beyond that, next week is a huge week for me. On Thursday early morning, I'll leave a hookup with Vin from No Nonsense Whiskey down in London, and we fly off together to Austin to the big gathering, the Whisky Tribe gathering. So excited about hooking up with all the other YouTube channels that's going to be there, with Daniel and Rex themselves, with all the brilliant, magnificent bastards and whiskey folk. So many of you that I've got to know over the last year or so. Really excited about that. It was a fabulous event last year, and I can pretty much guarantee that this event is going to be every bit as much fun. Lots to look forward to there. You know who you are. Can't wait to shake hands and share at drams with so many of you. Beyond that, we've got the Glasgow Whisky Festival, which is happening in early November. It's Saturday, the 9th of November. There are 2 sessions, one from 12 to 4, and the other one from, it's a bit later, I think it goes from 5 p.m. through till 9 o'clock at night. I'm going to the afternoon session, but all of that weekend around Glasgow, there'll be loads of whiskey folk in, loads of people from the chat. There'll be things happening that weekend. We just need to flesh out some of the meetups and things that we're going to do. I hope you're available to join us in Glasgow. While I'm talking about Glasgow, I want to point something out. This is just for the people that are here at the end. 152 of you still in. In this tissue paper, this is still wrapped in tissue paper because this is a gift. This is still available. There's a handful of bottles left, and it's a very special bottle. This is a Ben Nevis, 4 years old, bottled in collaboration between the Good Spirits Company in Glasgow and Ralphie. It's 61% ABV. It's delicious, and you can buy this online, so you don't need to be in or around Glasgow to get this. Just hit up the Good Spirits Company and grab one of the very last of the Ralphie bottles available. You heard it here. It's only about 55 quid. It's gorgeous. I keep qualifying it as kind of like, you know, it's good for a 4-year-old, but it's just good whiskey. The age is incidental, right? So yeah, you heard it here. Later in October, we have Sorry, it's actually in November. Into later in November, we have the Frankfurt Inter Whisky Festival. I've now confirmed my place there. I am going to join everybody there. We're calling it Dockfest after the last meetup that we had in Glasgow became kind of Rolf Fest. We're going to hook up and hang out in Frankfurt together at Inter Whisky. So for the guys based on the continent, it's a good opportunity for us to hook up. And if anybody's willing to make the flight over to Frankfurt for Inter Whisky, I'm going to be there, and I'm excited about that as well. So I've got a ton of stuff on, using huge favours from the family, from my wife, but it's all good, and I'm excited about enjoying and sharing whiskey season with you as we go forward. I think it's going to be more than 2 hours tonight, Ben. Do you think we should rush at the quiz? What do you think?
I don't think anyone minds when you run over.
No, I do. I like to keep it under 2 hours. Okay, folks, please stay and enjoy the quiz. Remember, it's only a multiple choice. You're only playing against yourself. There are no prizes here. Talking of prizes, we've got 2 giveaways. I want to give the set of drams away tonight. The 4 drams that we enjoyed together, I want to share out there with somebody. Ben's going to come out with a question as I raise a glass to say thank you to Dwayne Large for a virtual dram. Roy, a nice show, and a very good to see Ben as your guest. I hope that you have a great trip over the pond next week. It'll be wonderful for you to meet with so many whiskey folk in Texas. Slant you. And of course, Dwayne, you and I will get a chance to hang out together when you're here for the Glasgow Whisky Festival and other activities that you're getting involved in November. Slant you, my friend. You're always so very generous, and it's great to have you in here, Dwayne. Thank you. Fabulous Instagram content from Dwayne. Every single day, he celebrated Bourbon Month during September with different bourbons and write-ups for each. It was great to follow. And what a fantastic whiskey coin collection he's got as well. He was sharing that with us. Okay, Ben, what's your question then? To win 4 drams that we shared tonight, including that gorgeous Lagavulin, what kind of question can you ask the whiskey folk?
So the 2 that came to mind, both were Brora inspired because I was up there recently.
Brora, okay.
One of them is relatively easy. The other one may be biased towards my patrons. So you tell me which one to ask.
Well, ask an open one for the drams. Ask an open one, and the one that you feel might be a wee bit biased towards some inside intelligence for your channel, we can give away the book.
Okay. So the open-ended one first.
Yep.
What year did Brora close?
So there we go. What year did Brora finally close? Can I answer? Can I win my own drams? And we've got a winner straight away, James Hope. Would you agree? 1983?
That's certainly what they're advertising at the distillery, yep.
So, James, you have won yourself an old school Glenmorangie, Turmoa, JW Black from the 90s, and a delicious White Horse Lagavulin. And look at that, the knowledgeable crowd. Almost everybody's coming in and saying, a couple of people thinking 84. Now, that's interesting, but the official date year is what we're looking for. There are rumours around that they kept the equipment going at Brora for small batches into 1984, but there is nothing recorded, and it's just rumours. The official closing of Brora is 1983.
And if there's no record, then they were breaking some laws there, so...
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just write down that I'm shipping 4 samples to James. Fantastic, James. I've got your address. Nothing you need to do, my friend. 4 retro whiskies. Well done. Congratulations, James. Okay, ask the question for the book, Ben.
Okay, so Diageo have decided to reopen to reinvigorate Brora. Along with all of the buildings, they have a key piece of equipment which they are managing to refurbish and put back into operation. What is the key pieces of equipment? Good.
Can I answer?
You want to keep the book?
Yeah, I suppose I've got 2 copies. Okay, let's see what we have. Luna Aaron has said stills. And I think she's right.
Yep, when they sent them away, so Diageo own their own copper works. When they sent them to the copper works, the guys got hold of them, measured the wall thickness, said these are actually thicker than your current Clenleash stills. All we need to do is clean them, and so they sent them back within a couple of weeks rather than the months that they had anticipated.
Fantastic, fantastic. So it looks like same at your chat. Can you see the chat at your side? It looks like Luna Aram is the first.
Yeah, Luna was in quick.
Luna, congratulations. Super fast with the keys. And you're absolutely right. It's the stills at Brora. That is one of the most vital pieces of kit, if not the most vital piece of kit that they're able to be up and running with from the get-go. Fantastic. Luna, I just shipped a package to you today. I'll be back to the post office in the next couple of days to ship another one. No problem. Fantastic. Let's get this quiz underway. Multiple choice. Good luck, everybody that are still in and willing to join in with another quiz at the end. Okay, I need to remember how I'm doing this here. Let's try this. Will this work? Ooh, it looks like that's just about working. So there's a little thumbnail of us in the feed, but people can see the quiz. Question 1. Which distillery features cascading water on the outside of its spirit stills for cooling? Which distillery of the list I'm going to share with you features cascading water on the outside of the stills? So cooling water running down the outside of the stills. Is it A, Deanston, B, Glendronach, or C, Fettercairn? A, Deanston, B, Glendronach, or C, Fettercairn? Do you know this one, Ben?
I've heard it. I know that the information has gone into my head at one point, but it's not. I
Retained.
think so. I've been to Deanston. Fairly sure there was no waterfall going on there. Don't think it's Glendronach, so it's a bit of a guess, but I'm going with C, and I'm reassured to see that the crowd are going with C as well.
By a process of elimination, you're going for C. Let's have a wee look. I can tell you that cascading water falls down the side of the stills at Fettercairn. There's also a kind of similar thing going on at sister distillery Dalmore, where they have a kind of jacket arrangement going, but it's quite different at Fettercairn, where they literally have streaks of water going down the outside and recycle it through a trough at the base. Okay, so if you answered answer C for Fettercairn, give yourself a point as we go on to question 2. What is said to be Scotland's coldest distillery with an average annual temperature of 6 degrees Celsius, which is about 43 degrees Fahrenheit? The coldest distillery in Scotland is said to be A, Dalwhinnie, B, Scapa, or C, Old Pulteney. Coldest distillery, A, Dalwhinnie, B, Scapa, or C, Old Pulteney. I am a bit random sometimes, right? Have you heard this factoid?
I think so. They used to claim to be the highest in Scotland, but Breville's recently beat them to it by about 3 or 4 foot, something daft like that.
Who did?
Dalwhinnie?
Dalwhinnie used to claim to be the highest, that's right. And who beat them to the highest?
Breville.
Braval, that's right. Braval, Braes of Glenlivet, you're absolutely right. Yes, they did claim to be the highest, and no longer being the highest. I believe now they're claiming to be the coldest. Now, an average annual temperature of 6 degrees Celsius is pretty bloody cold, so I'll give them that, right?
I've got a video from the last time I stopped by there. I was just wearing a t-shirt. I stood out in front of the barrels with my camera, and I just, you can watch me shrink as the video goes on.
Yeah, I mean, you are really high up there, and you're in a very shallow glen. The wind is often howling. The rain comes in like crazy and just dumps on you. It is pretty brutal up there, pretty brutal. And that's why they've released that Winter's Gold. So it's purely winter distillate from Dalwhinnie that's in that expression. Okay, so if you answered A for Dalwhinnie, give yourself a point, and let's move into question 3. Nice and speedy. and ask, a malt distillery located inside Invergordon Grain Distillery was called what? So this is at Invergordon, a Highland Grain Distillery, had a malt distillery inside, so they had pot stills inside making malt. But what was its name? Was it A, Killyloch, B, Ladyburn, or C, Ben Wyvis? A, Killyloch, B, Ladyburn, or C, Ben Wyvis? So we're clearly talking about history here, quite a few years back. But it was a popular thing. It's not the first time it's happened. It's happened in a few different distilleries, grain distilleries where they have a malt distillery. Loch Lomond have malt and grain on the same site. Girvan down in Ayrshire has Ailsa Bay. What do you think, Ben?
I'm going to have to go with a total guess, and a lot of the crowd seem to be going with B as well, but it does seem somewhat split. So Ladyburn, was it? Is the only one that I think I've heard of before, so I'll go with that. Okay,
let's have a wee look. Invergordon Highland Grain Distillery, owned by the same people as Dalmore and Fettercairn, Jura, was in fact Ben Wyvis.
Pants.
It was a Ben Distillery. Ben Wyvis. Ben Wyvis was inside the grounds of Invergordon. Ladyburn was inside the grounds of Girvan down in Ayrshire. And Killyloch was nearby. It was an Inverhouse one nearby to me at Airdrie, not so far. But before Ailsa Bay, Ladyburn was there in Girvan. Ben Wyvis is the answer I was looking for. So if you answered C, give yourself a point. I think that was a tricky one. That was quite obscure. But there you go. Moving on to question 4. This is a bizarre question. I like these from time to time. How many YouTube whiskey channels are confirmed to attend the Whisky Tribe gathering in Austin, Texas next week? I know you're not joining us, Ben. I think the umbilical cord wouldn't stretch on this occasion, but maybe when it's Alfie, your baby's Alfie?
Yeah.
And when Alfie's a bit older, maybe you'll get a chance to join us for such excursions. It would be great fun. But I'm just asking, how many YouTube channels? This is awesome. We're getting together. A, 4, B, 11, C, 15. How many are all getting together? 4, 11, or 15? And this is not including the Whiskey Vault or the Whisky Tribe. It's not Rex and Daniel's channels. It's just visiting collaborative channels. Very cool. Let's hear, Ben. What do you think?
I was gut feeling going for about a dozen, so I'll stick with B, 11.
You think 11 channels? It's a lot of channels,
idea.
Right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the crowd seemed to be either going with B, 11, or C, 15. 4 was how many it was last year. It was the Whiskey Dick. It's Bourbon Night, Scotch Test Dummies, on myself. The 4 of us joined last year. It was a fantastic time. But next week is going to be 15 confirmed channels. Might end up being a wee bit more. I can actually tell you who those channels are. Let's see if I read this out to you just now. I can tell you that the channels joining in Texas next week is Bourbon Blind, Texas Whiskey Life, Bourbon Sane, Bourbon Junkies, Whiskey Crusaders, I Whiskey She Wines, Jason Calori, No Nonsense Whiskey, Cask Strength, Whiskey Dick, Eric Waite, Still It, the Scotch Test Dummies, it's Bourbon Night, and of course, Aquavitae. Great stuff, great fun. In case you haven't picked up already, I'm desperately excited to get across there and very much looking forward to it. As we go into question 5, it's a pictorial question, as it always is, and I can share with you here what I think is a very obvious picture postcard distillery. So have a look at that and tell me what you think it might be. I'll bring up the options in a second. Debhead is saying, I guess we'll have a good chance to be able to watch the action then. I would imagine that there's going to be somebody streaming, right? I know it was difficult. The streaming was difficult last time. There was only certain areas that we could get a strong enough Wi-Fi to stream, but you never know. We'll do the best that we can. What are we looking at here? Are we looking at A, Glenkinchie, B, Edradour, C, Glengoyne? A, Glenkinchie, B, Edradour, or C, Glengoyne? So all kind of 3 quite picturesque distilleries here, but I want you to choose which one we're looking at. What would you say, Ben?
I'm going with B, process of elimination. It was one of the distilleries I was planning to visit before the car accident, so I would have known if that hadn't have happened.
You would have known for sure if it hadn't happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame your whole trip was cut short. Yes, I can tell you that, like so many of the crowd, absolutely spot on, and spotting that cool little trickling stream there, the whitewashed buildings, the red doors. That's the little drive up the way to Edredauer Distillery in the Southern Highlands. Well done, everyone, if you picked Edredauer. A nice distillery to visit, not just because it's quaint, small, and nice to look around. They're making some great whiskies now, but also they've got a fantastic selection of Signatory Vintage bottlings in the shop there, because, of course, it's the home of Andrew Symington and Signatory Vintage as well. Question 6. It's an interesting one. I quite like this. Jack Daniel's real first name wasn't Jack. It was A. Jeffrey, B. Jasper, or C. Jimison. A. Jeffrey, B. Jasper, or C. Jimison. So was it Jeffrey Daniel? Was it Jasper Daniel or Jimison Daniel? Do you have any idea? Are you guessing?
Guessing, absolute guess, and I think I've picked the wrong one, judging off of the crowd. I'm going with C.
Could be a banana skin though, Ben. It could really be a banana skin. It's a tricky one, isn't it? DJ Scott Dog is saying Jasper. Whiskey Babbler is saying A for Jeffrey. So many people are going with B. A couple are saying A. Not many people think it's Jimison. Cartoon Face B. Let's have a look. I can tell you that Jack Daniels wasn't actually Jack. He was, in fact, Jasper. He was Jasper Newton Daniel. So there you go, Jasper. So did you guess B?
Yeah.
Are you keeping score? Because that's 6 questions so far.
I think I'm 2 wrong. 2 wrong so far.
4 out of 6? Oh, you're in good shape for a pass mark. Superb. We wouldn't expect anything less. Big guy, superb. Question 7. Which distillery acted as an inn for visiting excisemen, raising a red flag as a warning to neighbours when they were in residence? So when the when the excisemen came up to inspect the distilleries and to try and find the illegal distilleries or what have you, this distillery acted as a bit of a residence and inn for them, and it would raise a red flag at the back of the barn. I've heard a couple of different stories about this. It was either a flag or it was laundry raised, red laundry. But was it A, Cragganmore in Speyside, B, Cardew, or C, Craigellachie? All obviously Speyside distilleries where illicit distilling was absolutely rife, and before the Licensing Act of 1823 there was literally hundreds of illicit stills going on, and this is a great story. This has been a question I've had in reserve for a long time, but there was a ScotchWhiskey.com story came out just coincidentally today, which meant I was immediately slotting this wee question in there. I like it. I like the story. A, Cragganmore, B, Cardew, or C, Craigellachie? Ben, have you any intelligence here? What you think you...
I think it was B, and I'm going to be really embarrassed if it wasn't Cardew, because I think this is a story I told in my Cardew review, the only Cardew review I've done. I think the lady of the house used to make, as soon as they saw them come in, make a loaf of bread to mask the smell of the malt and everything as well, and throw flour around everywhere.
That's exactly true. She would hide all the ingredients, and it was, in fact, you're absolutely right. Oops. Cardew. Now, this is a story of Helen Cummings. I think her name was Helen Cummings. And she famously was bribed by the excisemen to give up some of the local illicit distillers. At first she refused and then agreed. She went along with the plan and asked them to come back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks down the road, the excisemen turned up and she gave them the location of an illicit still. The excisemen promptly went along and seized lots of old, worn-out distilling equipment and took it away. They got their win. She got her win. She got the financial reward, which she split and shared with the illicit distillers, who promptly went out and bought new distilling kit with the money, with the bribe money. I just think stories like that are just great.
Fantastic.
I love it. Okay, question 8. Which Scottish distillery lies furthest to the south? I'm rushing things a wee bit tonight. I do apologise for everyone. We're now at the 2-hour mark. Which Scottish distillery lies farthest to the south? This is a wee bit tricky. Is it A, Bladnoch, B, Borders, or C, Annandale? A, Bladnoch, B, Borders, or C, Annandale. It seems we always talk about the furthest north on the mainland and things. We don't seem to talk about the furthest south. I wonder if you would be guessing there or if you feel like you know, Ben.
No, total guess.
I guess, yep.
I'm going to go with Borders.
Okay. So I think, wow, this is definitely a banana skin by the look of the answers in the crowd. Marku Mackinnon is here. Good to see you, Marku. He's saying C. Jimmy Legg, A. Justin Martin, good to see you. Justin, A. Graham Stewart, good to see you. Rico's in. Rico Dinert, fantastic. Both saying C along with Tabitha. James Hope is saying Bladnoch. Guess. Okay, James, let's have a wee look to see if you're right. Is this your night, James? Are you not only winning jams, but you're getting questions right as well? Is it a purple patch for James? I can tell you the furthest south is, James, Bladnoch.
Oh, wow, that caught a lot of people out.
Yeah, it's not that much further south. It's in Wigton, south of Annan, south of the Borders distillery. Of the 3 that I gave you, Borders is just slightly the furthest north. But there you go, the furthest south distillery has been for a hell of a long time, Bladnoch. Moving on to question 9. And I'll ask everybody's scores after this one just to see where everybody's sat at. Which NAS single malt set YouTube channel Captain 3D on a fast track of Scotch whisky discovery? This is a very YouTube, or Whisky Tribe, if you like, focused question. Captain 3D channel is Phil and Deepa. Fantastic content that they're doing. Most of it they're approaching blind. They've been doing a tour of Scotland recently and video and all the stores and shops that they're going into, which has been a lot of fun for a lot of people. But their original video that I had them on and we shared the video on the topic of discussion. It was great stuff to watch where they were just starting out in their whiskey journey and they'd bought a bunch of whiskies and were trying them all blind. An epic size and scale of endeavour. But what was the bottle that started it for them? That's what I'm after. Was it A, Ardmore Legacy, B, Glenmurray Elgin Classic, or C, Jura Superstition? So all non-age statement whiskies. Was it A, Ardmore Legacy, B, Glenmurray Elgin Classic, or C, Jura Superstition? Well, let's see.
I think this one's a bit of a given because the answers came in before the options were on screen.
Yeah, I talked too long and people started throwing it all in. But this looks like a giveaway. After a few banana skins, this looks like a freebie. But honestly, I guess that you would have to know Phil and Deepa and be watching their awesome content in order to pick this one up. So it was a bit of an inside question. But anybody that's answered A for Ardmore Legacy is absolutely spot on, which it looks like most of the crowd. Danny is saying D, Elijah Craig, and that's a good spot, Dan, because they've been sharing their Elijah Craig everywhere. You got to hook up with Phil and Deepa, didn't you, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of samples from them, including this little bottle of Elijah Craig.
Yeah, I loved hanging out with them. They were just lovely people, great energy, great to spend time with, great to hang out with. Loved it.
It's well worth looking back at that original video as well, because they really went full hog. They were like, this tastes all right, and then just I think they went to
I said to them when they were here, I said, you guys, I refer to you as the fast trackers of whiskey. And they've really been bitten by the bug, but it's great to see that enthusiasm on screen as well. I absolutely love it. It's infectious. Okay, we've got some scores coming in. Who's on the high scores this week? James Hope is on 9 out of 9. Wow, James, it is your night. It absolutely is. Can you make it through and get the last one? Rico's on 6 out of 9. Tabitha 6. Daniel Vermas. Good to see you, Daniel, on 8. Greg's Whiskey Guide 7. Jimmy Jazz 5. Good score, Jimmy. Still a pass mark. Michael Johnson 7. Yeah, lots of good scores tonight. A bit easier than last week. I think I felt a wee bit guilty after tricky quiz last week. James McGoran 7. Gabriel Wilding. Good to see you, Gabriel. Nice to welcome you in. 8 out of 9. George O'Brien 7 out of 9. Per Christensen 7 out of 9. Justin Martin 5 out of 9. Optimistic. Jens Roger Christofferson is saying 9 out of 9 with a couple of guesses, but not slipped on any of the bananas. Okay, keep it together, my friend. Keep it together. 9 out of 9 for James and Jens Roger Christofferson. Great scores. Anybody else? Marcus Kreitner on 9 out of 9. Another 9 out of 9 there. Fantastic. Have I missed any? Are you watching this as well, Ben? I think we've got 3. Marcus is on 9 out of 9 as well.
Yeah.
Jens Roger Christofferson and James Hope. Okay, question 10. Let's see if we can hold it together, or am I going to throw in a banana skin for the last question? I think not this week, but maybe. Which of these companies is the largest in terms of Scotch malt? I'm talking about malt production here by capacity. So I'm not talking distilleries here. I'm actually talking owners. Tricky one. Is it A, Edrington Group, B, Bacardi Group, or C, Beam Suntory? Oh, there are people hating me right now. I've no doubt about that. So is it A, Edrington, B, Bacardi, or C, Beam Suntory, or Suntory Beam, however you want to refer to them?
This is one of those questions you think you know the answer to.
Yes, I'm going to ask you to pause and dwell for a second, and then I'll ask for your input. It's fairly critical. It's fairly huge, right? Edrington, obviously, the biggest in the Edrington would be Macallan. Bacardi is going to be, I don't know who the biggest would be in Bacardi. They've got Aberfeldy, they've got Altmore, they've got Craigellachie, Beam Suntory, Lefroy, Glengarry, etc., etc., etc. What would you guess, Ben?
I was going to go with A, but I can't see a single person in the chat saying A. Go on, I'll have to stick with A. Stay true to it.
Let's have a look. I can tell you that in terms of malt capacity, the biggest is A, Edrington.
I got real nervous when everyone was going with B. And
it's a tricky one. It's definitely a tricky one. So it's A. I was looking for A. Of course, Macallan. You know, we're up at, I don't know, what the 15 million litres capacity Macallan now. Highland Park is big. Glenrothes as well. Those figures may have included tiny Glenturret at that time, but no matter, the scale is such that Edrington is considerably bigger. Marcus Kreitner has crashed. Oh no, he's fallen out with me, saying darn 9 out of 10. James Hope is 9 out of 10 as well. Caught him out at the end. Oh dear. So who was left? Jens Roger Christofferson. Oh, banana.
Oh no.
All of them wiped out at the end. I feel terrible. I feel terrible. I'm laughing, but I'm laughing from nerves. I feel cruel.
You'll have no free quizzes now.
Oh dear. Oh dear. So there you go. Edrington Group are the biggest in terms of capacity of those 3. I do apologise. These banana skins, they do appear from time to time. 3 of you were so close. I can't believe that nobody guessed that. Nobody guessed that. Unbelievable. George Braley is saying love it. Yeah. Incredible. Daniel Ramas is saying bonus question. I think we'll leave it at that. And I think I'll send direct messages to Marcus, to Jens, and to James, and apologise to each of them for stealing their 10 out of 10 tonight. But listen, generally, very good scores tonight. I think it was either a slightly kinder quiz, or, you know, the barflies and the whiskey folk are becoming more and more knowledgeable all the time as we enjoy our whiskey journeys together. Talking of which, Ben, I've really enjoyed my evening tonight with you again. You're welcome on this channel anytime. I really enjoy what you're putting out in your channel as well, and it's a pleasure to collaborate with you in ways like this. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me. I always enjoy sitting in on the vPubs, and actually getting to attend them and see what you're up to behind the scenes is really great fun. I've really enjoyed it.
It's always great to have you. Neil Cochrane is saying, life is now not worth living. You were on a run of high scores, Neil. I bet you still scored high tonight. And Marcus is being very, very pragmatic and saying, Aquavita is still my best quiz yet. Thanks. Thank you to you, Marcus. Thank you for your understanding. There was no cruelty intended in that quiz tonight. It's just the way it kind of worked out. Really, really looking forward to the upcoming weeks, of course. My an update on the t-shirts and the coins, everything is ordered and everything's out there and arranged, sorted out. That should all be spilling in over the coming weeks. There might be lots of updates to share with you at the end of the month on the vPub at the end of the month. There is a guest teed up for that. I'm hoping that it works out. I brought in somebody from the industry for that one to talk about the celebration of the sherry cask, and we will touch on subjects such as American oak versus European oak, etc., etc. And I felt that it would be good to bring in a bit of outside expertise to help guide me on that one, and I've got somebody who's very willing to do that, somebody from the industry. Once that's confirmed and locked in, I'll share it. I'll share everything in an update with my patrons first, and then I'll put a public announcement out there. If I can stream from Texas, I will attempt, but I feel like I'm going to be just so distracted. I'll do my very, very best. Greg's Whiskey Tribe is great idea to invite Ben. I agree with you, Greg. It was fantastic. Thank you, Roy and Ben from Luna Aaron. Whiskey Freedom Fraser is saying good night all. Thanks, Aquaviti. Thanks, Whiskey Geek. Steve A, good to see you. Steve is saying, see you next weekend. I'm looking forward to it, my friend. Service Alafis. Wow, Andreas out there in Norway. It's the first I've spotted that you were in, saying great stream, Aquaviti. Great to have you in, Andreas. Good to have you here. Dwayne Large is saying, great show, Roy and Ben. Take care and cheers. Jimmy Legg is saying, and Ben always love hearing notes. He's very good at it, isn't he, Jimmy? Neil Cochran is saying, Roy, how good was tonight? Fantastic. Thank you, Neil. You're a star. Love having you here. Love having you at the Whiskey Club. Love having you around, my friend. Brilliant. And Hoyt has sent enough to buy me a craft beer in Austin. Hoyt, Slancheva, my friend. Thank you so much. Oh, and another one coming in at the dying embers. George Braley is saying, enjoy Texas and happy dramming. I'll do everything I can to share it, George, and find out a way to either participate and collaborate with other channels that have already got things going on, or try and bring you something. But I found myself laden with laptops and cameras and kit last year, and I think this time it would be nice just to take a mic and a smartphone. Marcus is saying, thanks for a wonderful vPub. As always, you're very welcome, Marcus. Thanks for joining. And James McGovern is saying, fantastic night tonight with you, Aquavite, Ben, Whiskey Geek. Cheers, guys. Danny is saying, are you stopping in New Jersey? Unfortunately, Dan, no. Just a direct flight from Heathrow straight through to Austin. Arriving Thursday, coming back on Sunday. Very short stop. Scotty S is saying, first vPub I've managed. The complete show. Scotty, well done. I hope you enjoyed it, my friend. Ben, thank you so much once more. And I hope it's not the last time I have you on here. I think there's lots of things that we could be collaborating on in the future as I raise this glass of JW Black, which I think you were quite surprised by. And say thank you to you and thank you to everybody. And until the next vPub, Slancha.
Slancha.